It was just after 9 when the phone rang. I'd poured a second glass of Merlot, half watching the late news, not really listening. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that settles deep into the walls when everyone's gone home and the celebration is over. The wedding had been 3 weeks ago. My son, Matthew, married to a woman named Alana. Beautiful ceremony, tasteful reception, expensive but worth it. Or so I'd told myself when the final invoice came in. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then I did. "Mr. Lane?" a voice asked, shaky. "This is Claire. Claire Sutton. I was one of Alana's bridesmaids." I sat up. "Yes. I remember. Are you all right? I need to talk to you. In person. Tomorrow morning if possible." She was speaking fast, clipped. "I'm sorry to call so late. It's about the wedding. The photos. I found something." I stood, carried the phone into the kitchen, lowered my voice without meaning to. "Something? I can't explain over the phone. You need to see it. Please, come alone. And don't say anything to Matthew. Or to Alana." There was a silence on the line, like she was weighing every word. "Why not?" I asked. "Because I don't know what it means yet. And if I'm wrong, I just need you to see it first." I didn't respond right away. I thought of Claire at the reception, quiet, polite, a friend from Alana's university days, I'd been told. She didn't seem unstable, not the dramatic type. "Where?" I asked. "There's a coffee shop off Bell and 7th. Café Loam. Parking lot out back. I'll be there at 9. Another pause. "You'll come?" "Yes," I said, unsure why I was agreeing. "I'll come." She exhaled a shaky, relieved breath. "Thank you. Good night, Mr. Lane." The call ended. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the fridge like it might answer the questions forming in my head. What could possibly be in the wedding photos that required secrecy, urgency, and a meeting in a parking lot? I poured out the rest of the wine. I didn't like the way the air felt all of a sudden. Too still, like something was holding its breath. Café Loam sat tucked between a shuttered print shop and a yoga studio that hadn't opened on time in months. The parking lot behind it was mostly empty, cracked asphalt, shaded by a pair of sickly trees and a rusted-out awning. I arrived just before 9. Claire was already there, waiting near the back, arms crossed tight over her chest. She wore a denim jacket over a white sundress, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger than I remembered. Nervous energy radiated off her in waves. She didn't smile. "Thank you for coming," she said, voice low. I nodded. "What is this about?" She didn't answer right away. Just reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. Held it out like it might burn her fingers. "I found something. In the wedding photos. I was reviewing the ones friends sent me, group shots, candids from the cocktail hour, things like that. Not the official stuff. These were taken by guests. I took the drive. It felt heavier than it should have. And I started noticing something strange. A man. In the background of several pictures. Different angles, different times. Not posing, not smiling. Just there, watching. She swallowed, looked away. At first I thought it was just a coincidence. A waiter maybe, or a relative I didn't recognize. But then I realized he's in too many places he shouldn't be. Facing the camera in every one. And then, there's one photo. I don't even know how to describe it. "Try," I said quietly. She looked at me then, her expression tight, strained. "It's from the toast." Alana's father was speaking. Everyone's attention was on him. But someone, I think it was one of Matthew's college friends, snapped a shot over the crowd. And in that photo, the man is standing directly behind Alana. Close. Too close. And the weird part? No one else sees him. No one turns. No reaction. Like he's not really there. But he is, clear as day. My mouth had gone dry. You showed this to anyone else? No. Just you. I didn't know who else to trust. And I thought, you'd want to see for yourself. She took a step back. Please don't tell them. Not yet. I looked at the flash drive again. Something about the weight of it made my stomach turn. I waited until the house was empty before I opened the drive. No distractions. No interruptions. I sat at the desk in my study, blinds drawn. The only sound, the soft hum of the ceiling fan. The flash drive clicked into place. A folder labeled Wedding Candid, Claire, opened automatically. Inside were nearly 200 photographs. I started at the top. The first few were what I expected. Claire and the other bridesmaids in soft pink dresses, sipping champagne in the bridal suite. Matthew, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Alana laughing with her friends, all effortless joy and glowing skin. A handful of group shots at the reception. Speeches. Dancing. The usual. Nothing strange. Then, around photo 20, something shifted. In the background of a group shot near the bar, there he was. A man. Standing near a column, half in shadow. Older than most of the guests. Suit dark, face unreadable. I squinted. No one seemed to be speaking to him. No one stood near him. Just there. Watching. I clicked to the next image. Different angle. Same man. This time behind a cluster of people by the cake table. Again, alone. No drink in hand. No smile. Same expression neutral. Almost blank. Eyes fixed somewhere past the frame. I clicked faster. He kept appearing. Over and over. Sometimes near the dance floor, sometimes at the edge of the crowd. Always positioned just enough to avoid attention, but never far from Alana. A frame from the cocktail hour showed him standing behind a potted plant, half his face obscured, but unmistakable. I leaned forward, hand frozen over the mouse. The man wasn't just present. He was tracking her. One photo made me stop completely. The toast. Alana's father raising a glass, guests clapping, smiles all around. And there, just behind Alana's right shoulder, the man. Inches away. No one else turned. No one looked alarmed. Her head was tilted slightly, her eyes on her father, completely unaware of the presence just behind her. The man's eyes weren't on the speaker. They were locked on her. His expression hadn't changed. No malice, no warmth, just focus. My skin prickled. This wasn't coincidence. Whoever he wasn't just a guest no one remembered. He was there for her, and no one had seen it. Sleep was impossible after that. I stared at the image on my screen long after midnight, clicking between frames, zooming in and out, memorizing the man's features. Receding hairline, thin face, slight tilt of the head, like he was listening for something only he could hear. But it wasn't until I dragged the photo into a separate window and adjusted the contrast that the recognition hit me. Not a full memory, more like a tug, a shape in the fog. I'd seen him before. Not at the wedding. Somewhere else. Somewhere quiet. I got up, crossed the room to the bookshelf, and pulled down the album from the top shelf. Elaine, 2017. My wife's funeral. 5 years ago. Late September. Closed casket. Pancreatic cancer. She'd been gone 8 months before they even gave us a real diagnosis. I hadn't looked through those photos in years. Didn't think I ever would again. But now, I needed to. The church. The reception hall. The flowers. Lilies. Her favorite. I flipped slowly, careful not to skip. Friends from the neighborhood. My sister and her husband. Elaine's old co-workers from the school board. And then page 6. Lower left. A wide shot of the church steps. Mourners gathered in clusters. I leaned in. There he was. Off to the side. half behind a marble column. Same posture. Same dark suit. Face turned just enough to show his profile. Not looking at the casket. Looking at me. At Elaine. I sat down slowly. My chest felt hollow. Cold. It was him. The man from the wedding. Standing at my wife's funeral. I flipped the page, checked the next few images. He didn't appear again. Just that one frame. Not close. Not involved. But present. A watcher. I stared at the album for a long time. My mind churned, searching for logic. Was he a professional photographer? A funeral worker? Someone from the church? But that didn't track. He wasn't in the background of any other shot. Just that one. Just enough to be noticed if anyone had looked. I hadn't. Not until now. 5 years apart. 2 events. 2 appearances. Same man. Same stillness. I closed the album carefully and looked back at the screen. My fingers felt numb. This wasn't random. And it wasn't over. The next morning, I drove to the wedding venue. Didn't call ahead. I wanted to catch people off guard. Not to be cruel, but because I needed honesty. Unfiltered. The Scottsdale Gardens, a high-end event space tucked into the desert hills, all stone walkways and shaded courtyards. I'd cut a check for $14,000 to secure it. I figured that bought me a few questions. The manager was a woman named Shelley. Mid-50s, polite but guarded. I told her who I was. Said I was reviewing footage from the wedding for insurance reasons. A lie, but close enough to a truth. She led me into a back office, small but modern. Monitors. Drives. A wall-mounted screen. "We only keep raw surveillance for 30 days, she said. "You're lucky. You're just under the wire." I nodded. "Can we start with the west entrance?" Around 4 in the afternoon, she loaded the file. Video played a muted stream of arrivals. Guests in formal wear, familiar faces stepping out of cars, hugging, laughing, adjusting dresses. Matthew arrived with his groomsmen. Alana with her bridal party. I leaned forward, scanning for that face. 42 minutes in there. Top of the frame. The man. Walking in alone. No coat, no bag, no hesitation. Just moved with purpose. Like he belonged. He walked past the camera. And out of frame. Shelley paused. "Who's that?" "I was hoping you'd know. Not from our staff. And he's not on the guest log. Can you pull the footage from the exits?" She did. We watched. People leaving. Handshakes, waves, stumbles of the overly drunk. But the man never reappeared. Not through the main exit. Not the side lot. Not the rear walkway. Not once. I asked to speak with the staff who worked that evening. Shelley called in too. A bartender and a floor manager. I showed them a still photo from Claire's images. Neither recognized him. Both swore they'd never seen him during the night. "Someone would have said something," the manager insisted. "We noticed stragglers. We're trained to." But no one had. He was in the photos. He was on the footage. But in person, it was like he hadn't been there at all. Or like he'd vanished into the walls. I thanked them and left. Driving home, I watched the sky darken, desert wind kicking dust across the road. The questions outnumbered the answers. But one thing was clear. He'd come for a reason. And he hadn't left. After that, I started watching her. Not in an overt way. No suspicion in my voice. No loaded questions. Just noticing. The little things. Alana had always been composed, the kind of woman who made eye contact, smiled politely, asked about your day, even when she didn't care about the answer. But now something had shifted. There was an edge to her movements, a tightness in her jaw that hadn't been there before. She avoided the living room in their house. That struck me first. Every time I visited Matthew, she kept to the kitchen or disappeared upstairs. Said she had a call, or a headache, or work to finish. That room had the wedding photo on the wall, a framed enlargement, taken during the toast. The very same moment captured by Claire's image. Except in this one, cropped tightly, there was no trace of the man behind her. Just Alana, smiling into her champagne. I watched her eyes when she passed it. She never looked at it directly. Not once. On Sunday, we had dinner at my house. Matthew, Alana, and Wendy, my daughter, joined me for roast and salad. Small gathering. Harmless. Or it should have been. Halfway through, Wendy pulled out her phone, laughing. "Claire sent me a bunch of candid shots from the wedding," she said. "Some of these are actually better than the professional ones." Alana froze. It wasn't obvious at first. Just her fork paused halfway to her mouth, hand suspended mid-air. Then she set it down, too gently. "Oh?" she asked, voice thin. "Yeah. Look at this one." Wendy turned the screen toward the table. It was the cocktail hour, guests mingling, sun pouring through the arched windows. In the background, just barely, I saw him, blurred, but unmistakable. I glanced at Alana. Her eyes were fixed on the photo. Not in admiration, in dread. She blinked once, then stood abruptly. "Excuse me," she said, forcing a smile. "I need the restroom." She walked out too quickly. Matthew barely noticed, too busy laughing at a joke Wendy had cracked. But I watched her go. She didn't return for 10 minutes. When she did, her smile was back, and her hands had stopped shaking. But I saw her glance, just once, toward the phone on the table and the image it still displayed. Whatever was in those photos, she already knew. And she was afraid it had followed her home. I didn't call ahead. I drove straight to Claire's apartment the next morning, a modest complex in Tempe, with sun-faded stucco and a courtyard fountain that hadn't worked in years. She answered on the second knock. Her eyes widened when she saw me, not surprised. More like she'd been expecting this moment and dreading it in equal measure. "Mr. Lane, I didn't think. We need to talk," I said. "Now." She stepped aside silently. The apartment was small but tidy, smelling faintly of lavender and yesterday's coffee. She gestured toward the couch, but I remained standing. "The photos," I started. "How did you really get them?" Claire's shoulders slumped, her composure evaporating. She looked younger like this, stripped of the calm she'd forced during our parking lot meeting. "I didn't take them," she said quietly. "I didn't even collect them from friends. They were emailed to me." "By who?" "I don't know." She rubbed her palms together. There was no subject line, no message, no name, just a link to a drive folder. Every image already organized, time-stamped, labeled. My stomach tightened. "And you didn't think that was something to mention earlier?" She flinched. I was afraid. I didn't know what any of it meant. I thought maybe it was some kind of prank or someone jealous. But then I saw him. That man. In picture after picture. And I realized it wasn't a joke. She lifted her eyes, and for the first time, I saw real fear there. I wanted to delete everything. I really did. But I couldn't. Something felt wrong. And then I saw the one from the toast. The way he stood behind Alana, close enough to touch her. And she didn't react. No one reacted. She swallowed hard. "I thought, maybe you would know something. Or notice something I couldn't." I let her words settle, watching the way she twisted the ring on her right hand. Nervous habit. "You said at the cafe that you didn't know what this meant," I said, "but you were holding something back. What is it?" Claire hesitated only a moment. "I think Alana knows him." "Why?" "Because I saw her face at brunch the morning after the wedding," she whispered. She looked like she hadn't slept. She kept checking the door, her phone, the windows, like she was waiting for someone, or scared someone might show up. She looked up at me. I don't think that man was a stranger to her. I think she hoped he was gone. And he's not. By the next day, Claire's confession had lodged itself deep in my mind, refusing to dislodge. If Alana knew the man, if she recognized him, then there had to be a thread connecting them, something I could pull. I sat at my desk long after sunrise, laptop open, coffee untouched. I started with her past, whatever pieces of it I could find without raising suspicion. Public records, old social media posts, engagement announcements, articles from her hometown paper. It was tedious work, slow and fragmented. But eventually a headline caught my eye. Local man, missing after dispute with fiancé. Police investigating. The date: 6 years ago. Colorado Springs. The photo beside the article showed a young man in his late 20s, clean cut, athletic build, slight downturn to the mouth. Not identical to the man in the wedding photos. Older now, thinner, harder, but the bone structure was unmistakable. Same eyes, same jawline. His name was Ethan Rourke. Missing. Never found. The article detailed the basics. He and his fiancée had argued outside a bar. Witnesses saw him walk away. He never returned home. The fiancée? Alana Carter, my daughter-in-law. I stared at the screen, pulse thudding in my ears. Another article followed. Then another. Rumors. Speculation. Some said Ethan had a history of jealousy, instability. Others said Alana had ended the engagement, suddenly, too suddenly. And Ethan hadn't taken it well. But the police never found evidence of foul play. No body, no belongings, no trail. The case had gone cold. I leaned back in my chair, the room feeling colder than it had a moment before. Ethan had vanished after a fight, a sudden disappearance, a broken engagement. And now, 6 years later, a man who looked like him was appearing in the background of my son's wedding photos, watching Alana with eerie focus. My thoughts spiraled. If it was him, if he'd resurfaced, why now? Why at the wedding? And why had he been at Elaine's funeral? My wife had never even met Alana. The timeline didn't make sense, unless this wasn't about Alana at all. Not entirely. I clicked back through the photos, comparing features, angles, shadows. The resemblance sharpened with each comparison. Ethan Rourke wasn't missing. He was here, haunting events like a shadow no one noticed, except whoever had sent Claire the photos. I closed the laptop slowly. Something wasn't adding up, but one thing was painfully clear. This man had been circling the edges of my life, long before my son married Alana. And he wasn't done yet. I waited until Matthew had left for the office. Said he had a meeting downtown. Wouldn't be back until late. I called Alana around noon. Told her I needed to drop something off. She hesitated, then said she'd be home. Her voice sounded careful, guarded. When I arrived, she was already at the door. Makeup on, hair pulled back, blouse too crisp for a day spent alone. She was trying to look composed. I didn't bother with pleasantries. Can we sit? She led me to the kitchen, hands clasped in front of her. Sunlight poured through the window above the sink, catching in the dust on the granite countertops. I pulled the printed photo from my coat pocket, the one from the toast. Him, behind her, inches away. I placed it on the table between us. She stared at it, didn't reach for it, didn't ask what it was, just stood there, eyes fixed. Her expression didn't change at first. Then her breath caught so subtle it might have been nothing. "You recognize him," I said. She didn't answer. "Alana, look at me." Slowly, she sat. Her fingers trembled as they touched the edge of the photo. "Where did you get this?" "That doesn't matter. Did Matthew see it?" "No." That seemed to crack something open. She closed her eyes. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I never meant for this to follow me." "Who is he?" I asked. "Ethan?" She flinched. Her shoulders folded inward. He wasn't always like that. When we got engaged, he was charming, sweet. Everyone liked him. But something changed. He started controlling everything. Where I went, who I talked to. He was paranoid, possessive. I tried to leave once, and he smashed my phone, punched a hole through the wall. I said nothing, just listened. That night, the fight outside the bar, I told him it was over, that I was done. He walked away, and then he vanished. Everyone thought I had something to do with it, but I didn't. Her eyes were glassy now. I swear I didn't. I was relieved he was gone. I thought I was free. And now? She looked back at the photo. Her voice was almost inaudible. Now, I don't know if I ever was. I left her there, sitting at the table. The image between us, like a wound that had just been reopened. But I couldn't shake the way she'd said it. I never meant for this to follow me. Not him. This. The words circled my mind the rest of the day. I couldn't let them go. Not just the guilt or the fear in her voice, but the way she'd said it. I never meant for this to follow me. Not him. This. Something broader. Something ongoing. Something alive. I waited until just after dusk, parked 2 blocks down, and approached the house on foot. I felt ridiculous. A man in his 60s sneaking into his son's backyard like a thief. But I had to see for myself. I knew the layout well enough. Knew they kept a spare key taped beneath the gutter elbow by the garage. It was still there. The house was dark. No lights on. Matthew had said they were going to dinner with friends. I stepped inside and moved quickly, carefully. Nothing seemed out of place until I reached the basement door. It was locked. Not unusual. Except this lock was new. Heavy duty. Exterior grade. Padlocked from the outside. That wasn't normal. Not in your own home. I stood there for a long time, hand resting on the cold metal. Then I turned and went to the garage. Found a crowbar behind the water heater. I'd helped Matthew install those shelves 2 years ago. I knew where everything was. It took 3 tries to crack the lock. The metal snapped with a pop that felt too loud in the stillness. I eased the door open. A smell hit me. Not rot, but something stale. Damp. Human. The air was heavy. The light at the top of the stairs didn't work. I took out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, catching the bare concrete walls. A pile of old boxes. A washing machine. And something else. A shape in the far corner. Motionless. Seated. Tied to a chair. For a moment, I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The man's head was down. His wrists were bound with rope. His ankles, too. His clothes were tattered, stained. But when the light swept across his face, one eye twitched, opened, blinked against the brightness. Alive. My pulse pounded in my throat. My hands were shaking. "Ethan," I said, barely able to speak. He didn't respond, just looked at me with a slow, vacant recognition. He was gaunt, pale, and very real. No ghost. No hallucination. Someone had kept him here. Someone had fed him. Someone had kept him hidden. And that someone lived upstairs. This story was brutal. But this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.